So our next speaker, I first met Bakari Kitwana last December through our colleague and former board member David Orr, who will be speaking later on a panel. At the time, Bakari was co-editing David's groundbreaking anthology book called Democracy Unchained: How to Rebuild Government for the People. The book launched a larger initiative called the Democracy Unchained Conversations series that you don't want to miss online, and Bakari's part of that. Bakari is a big-hearted and astonishingly brilliant polymath. He's an internationally known cultural critic, journalist, activist, and thought leader in the area of hip-hop and black youth political engagement. He's executive director of Rap Sessions, which has conducted town hall meetings around the nation on difficult dialogues facing millennials. In 2004, Bakari co-founded the National Hip Hop Political Convention. He's a fellow at the Hutchins Center for African and African American Research at Harvard. There, he recently worked with Henry Louis Gates' program to archive his remarkable collection of interviews with rap artists on the role of hip hop in elections. But in this year of Black Lives Matter becoming the biggest movement in American history, Bakari has a powerful vision for building liberated black communities that will also help heal our democracy and fulfill its unfulfilled promise. Please join me with the warmest Bioneers welcome for Bakari Kitwana, live from Ohio.
Good morning / afternoon, depending on where you are. It's great to be here. Thanks, Kenny, for that great introduction. I'm going to talk a little bit about my work on this book with David Orr. A little bit of background about me. I'm an activist and author, and I believe in my writing that the work has to live off the page for it to be meaningful. I've tried to do that through my work at Rap Sessions, where we work at the intersection of hip hop, arts, and activism to get young people engaged in electoral politics and civic engagement in general. And I've done that for the last 15 years. More recently, I'm bringing that attention to this project with David Orr, the book Democracy Unchained: How to Rebuild Government for the People. The book is co-edited by myself, David, William Becker, and Andrew Gumbel, and published by the New Press in March 2020. How did we get to the book? In 2017, my friend Dan Malthrope, who is the CEO of the City Club of Cleveland, invited me to a conference that he was going to that involved 50 folks from around the country, thought leaders from a variety of disciplines. This was a conversation that was amazing. Jane Mayer was there, Ari Behrman was there, Reverend Barber was there, among others. And the folks sat around really kind of thinking about what had happened with this last election and were concerned about the grave danger that this new presidency posed for the future of democracy. In hindsight, the group was ahead of its time. Since then, we've witnessed the reduced taxes on the wealthiest, social programs cut for the poorest, inferior appointments to important positions, eviscerated environmental protections, ignored ethical standards, lowered morale throughout federal agencies, undermined respect for a free press, science, and logic, advanced hyper-partisanship, poor oversight of a global pandemic that took the lives of at least 280,000 Americans to date, and much, much more. The result, the US is weaker, more divided, less tolerant, and more violent. During Trump's impeachment trial in the early weeks of 2020, we witnessed a Republican Congress unwilling to choose the Constitution and the law over their own party interests. Even today, less than 7 weeks before the scheduled inauguration of President-elect Biden, for some, the election fight rages on, and whether President Trump will willingly concede is not a foregone conclusion. I want to talk a little bit about racial justice. I believe that when it comes to safeguarding and building democracy, Most Americans, especially those born in the last half century, have had the leisure to do the bare minimum. The last 4 years have revealed that that is no longer enough. We're now posed with the challenge of getting Americans from all walks of life to roll up their sleeves and jump into a different level of engagement. For Black folks who are conscious and political, this has been so much about the normal day-to-day life of being Black in America. Our fights have forever been for racial justice, self-determination, and democracy. Always democracy. I remember early on when David asked me to become involved in the project, he's describing to me what this book would be about. And I said to him, laughing, this is already what we Black folks in America have been doing for centuries. What took you so long? Seeing injustice after injustice and knowing there is no one to turn to but yourselves, because while it's possible, it's more than likely that the government isn't coming to save you. Justice isn't coming. The criminal justice system and the police are not your friend. This is a dangerous place to be without a spiritual center, without, as Cornel West says, hope on a tightrope. It can make you very cynical. It can make you want to give up, but you'll have to dig deep inside yourself and wake up again and again and keep fighting. I'm reminded of 3 folks who I've encountered in my work as an activist over the last 30 years. And I want to talk to you about them and their stories, because I think that their stories remind us of the forgotten people who we have to fight for every day if we're going to build a democracy of meaning. The first is Geronimo G. Jaga Pratt. Geronimo Pratt, came to mind when I was thinking about my comments for this presentation, because I met him for the first time 27 years after he got out of prison. I interviewed him, the first interview he did after being incarcerated for a crime he did not commit. You may be familiar with his attorney, Johnny Cochran. What most folks don't know is they're from the same hometown in Louisiana, and Johnny Cochran defended him, and eventually the second time won. The first time did not win, and it's something that he said haunted him his entire career as an attorney. Geronimo was a war veteran, did 2 tours of duty in Vietnam, was awarded the Purple Heart, but still this country and his government abandoned him. Kenny mentioned earlier that I'm calling in from Cleveland, Ohio. Cleveland, Ohio gained notoriety some years ago now for the police killing of Tamir Rice. I've worked with Tamir Rice's mom, Samaria Rice, over the years now to try to fight to help bring justice for her son. Tamir Rice was 12 years old, playing in a park, and was shot. And basically, the answer of our government and our society was that there was no pathway of justice for Tamir Rice, neither as there was for Geronimo G. Jaga Pratt. The last person I want to talk about is Yusuf Salaam. Yusuf Salaam, one of the exonerated 5, was known as one of the Central Park 5. I came to know him when he was finally released from prison and later on exonerated. And Yusuf, just an amazing young brother, an amazing talent. And I believe he spent over a decade in prison for a crime he didn't commit. One of the ringleaders that called for his hanging was now President Trump. One of the things that Yusuf said to me early on when I began to work with him that has stayed with me in my work, and as I think about racial justice, he said, if you're innocent, even one day spent incarcerated is too much. When it comes to Black Americans who have suffered injustices, I could go on detailing the people, the many, many people for whom justice never came, or if it did, it came far too late. Americans, especially those who once felt innately empowered by whiteness, now have a unique opportunity to know what it feels like to live with this failure of democracy to work. The question is, how do we move forward? Which brings me back to the State of American Democracy convening. The follow-up to this convening is the new book, Democracy Unchained: How to Rebuild Government for the People. The book is a handbook for the crises facing our democracy and a blueprint for how we resolve the crises of our time. We need everyone to understand that it's time to go to work. The book is divided into 4 parts. Part 1, the crisis of democracy. Part 2, the foundations of democracy. Part 3, policy changes. And Part 4, who acts. On the issues of racial justice, we have contributions from Michael Eric Dyson, Rashad Robinson of Color of Change, who writes about corporate responsibility, Dr. Andrea Gillespie and Dr. Nadia Brown, who write about Black women and political empowerment and what they have to teach the world about democracy. And lastly, I want to mention Mayor Raz Baraka, the mayor of Newark, who writes on the need for a Marshall Plan for America's cities. I want to just briefly read from the book and show it to you. Some of Mayor Baraka's words. He says, we need to repair centuries of deliberate dehumanization and disenfranchisement of African Americans in this country. It is my belief that this is the only thing that will move Americans' economy and its people forward. White supremacy is outdated. The old machinations and designs once used to lift the economy up are the very things that are now holding it back. Our failure to embrace this new, more colorful, broad, and diverse America is the obstacle that burdens us. He goes on. I was born in Newark, New Jersey, a couple of years after the rebellion in 1967. I remember hearing the stories of my father being hit over the head by a police officer who happened to be one of his former classmates from Barringer High School, from which my father graduated. I saw a picture of my father chained to a wheelchair in a hospital, bleeding from his head. My mother tells stories of running through the streets of Newark looking for him. He was later charged in court, and one of his poems was read as proof of his support for the insurrectionists that were raging in the city's 3rd Ward. More than 5 years later, I became the mayor of my city, as it still struggles with the issues that Newark's first African-American mayor, Kenneth Gibson, struggled with in 1970. Our desire to make democracy real for all of us. You can find an ongoing discussion series about the book on the website stateofamericandemocracy.org. And I'll end here. On November 4th, we, all of us together, reset the clock on possibilities. Many of us already got busy doing this work in the aftermath of the George Floyd protest, George Floyd killing and protests that reached over 2,000 American cities, according to the New York Times, and according to Candid, who tracks global philanthropy, billions of donations poured into racial justice organizations following the uprising. Likewise, some of us are looking forward to the passage of legislation around voting rights in honor of John Lewis, a Green New Deal, ending so-called justifiable homicide, the unemployment crisis, a bankrupt criminal justice system, and more. And just yesterday, a federal judge ordered the restoration of DACA program that offers protections for over 1 million undocumented immigrants who came to this country as children. All promise that we are on the verge of a giant step in terms of race relations that the nation hasn't seen since the civil rights and Black Power movements of the 50s, 60s, and 1970s. But as we begin the long and difficult work of fixing our democracy, let us be sure that we don't stop at the angry rural white guys and soccer moms that President-elect Biden has already said Democrats have to figure out how to reach. Let's make it also work for the Tamir Rices, the Breonna Taylors, the Yusuf Salams, the Geronimo Pratts, and other political prisoners still behind bars, in part for demanding America live up to its creed. I want to call your attention again to David Orr's panel, which will be coming up at I guess within the next half an hour, as well as my panel that I'll be moderating with Latasha Brown of Black Voters Matter and Mutale Nkande of AI for the People, and Grayson Martinez, who runs the organization she runs an organization that she leads the largest organization of undocumented undocumented immigrants in the country. So please tune in to that. I thank you for your attention. I thank you for inviting me to this forum, and I'm hoping to hear all of the great things you all have to say. Thanks, Kenny, and everyone else who put this wonderful conference together.